So, hello everyone, and welcome to the second talk of Music Network's professional development course for musicians taking charge of your performance career performing online. My name's Sarah Ledridge, and I'm delighted to welcome today Mairéad O'Reilly to present on the subject of optimizing your audio when performing online. Mairéad is a live sound engineer specializing in acoustic music. She's also lectured on sound technology and is the founder of More Sound, a dedicated voiceover and post-production studio aimed at producing high-quality audio for online learning materials. Just to say, we'll be sharing a PDF with you all afterwards, which will contain a summary of Mairéad's key points, plus links to any websites, etc. that she may have mentioned. This webinar is also being recorded and will be available to view on the Music Network YouTube channel from January. Now, we'd love to hear from you, and Mairéad will have plenty of time to take questions at the end, so please do type your questions into the Q&A box rather than the chat box. If you're having any technical difficulties, do let me know in the chat box and I'll do my best to help you. And now I am going to hand over to Mairéad O'Reilly.
Thank you, Sarah. Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining in. Firstly, I'm going to share my screen with you. So I'd like to thank Music Network for inviting me to present this webinar. My focus will be on how to optimize your audio in preparation for video and streaming. I have a slide deck here and I'll run through it and we'll have a Q&A session at the end. So I'm going to look at some ways of approaching audio for online performances. We'll look at live...
Just to tell you, your screen isn't shared.
Isn't it?
No.
Oh, just a moment, sorry. Will I go back? Okay.
Yeah, I'd go out and start again.
Okay. So you can hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. We see you, not your screen.
Sorry about that.
That's it.
You got that, Jess? Okay, 1 second now. We go full screen.
Yeah, great.
That's okay. So, okay, sorry about that. False start. Okay. So, I'm going to take a look at some ways of approaching audio for online performances. I'm going to look at live streaming versus pre-recording, the basic equipment that is required and how that can be expanded upon, some setup tips and maybe some common pitfalls that you might be able to avoid, and some testing strategies. So those of us in music and sound are used to listening to full quality WAV and AV files coming out of the recording studio. But to perform online, we need to incorporate video and streaming, and neither of these are particularly lending to quality audio. So the key to this is probably the most important thing I'm going to say all day, and that is make sure your source audio is as good as possible. You have elements of control up to the gateway to the stream, and that's what we're going to look at. So it's a myth to think that you can just record audio and fix problems in post-production, or that a bit of EQ is going to sort it out, or sweeten it up, or liven it up, or whatever. And I think a simple analogy comes to mind for me, and it's if you were to think of a cake that goes horribly wrong when you're baking it, and it comes out of the oven, it hasn't risen, and you say, right, I'm going to put a load of icing on this and we'll see if we can camouflage it. But we all know that that isn't going to work. You take a bite and you know. So the other thing we know is that you can't unbake it. You have to go back to source. You have to figure out what went wrong, what were the ingredients, what were the quantities, put it in the oven at the right temperature, and when it comes out the next time, you have a much better cake, and you can question whether you need the icing or not. Chances are you won't. So if you come back to this analogy all the time with the audio, get the source, get the audio right at the beginning. There are a few major factors, so I'm just going to look at how you go about that really. There are a few major factors that will affect the source audio quality, and these you can nip in the bud really. The first one, the location or the venue that you choose to either stream from or record. And I'll be using these terms interchangeably. There's, I think, a little bit of confusion, and people with all the streaming and, the live performances that are going on from empty venues and all that, some people are thinking that if I go into a music venue, it's going to sound great. But it won't necessarily. The thing, even if you've had a good gig in a music venue, the thing that is worth keeping in mind is, what was the sound check like? So very often a live venue doesn't sound good, full stop, even when there are people in. But a lot of the time, a venue can sound pretty awful at the sound check. And when all the bodies come in, it sounds good. So your stream or your recording is going to be in the empty venue, which is probably going to be the hard, echoey, nasty sound. So just be very careful of that. You'd be better in a nice room at home, perhaps. So I'm going to go through a few of the things to watch, which should make you just dismiss certain possibilities. The first thing when you are doing a recce of where to perform, basically, is to check if there are external noises, because they're things that are beyond your control. Like if there are diggers outside, or if there's a lot of traffic, or if there's a lot of aircraft, or even animal sounds. They're things that they're just too big to take on with all the other things you've got to think of. So just move venue. Internal noises, especially if you're at home, there's a lot of things you can actually control, because it could be from a washing machine to a fridge to central heating. And the funny thing about internal noises is that we become immune to them when we're in our own environment, so we don't even hear them. So you have to start tuning in and thinking, start listening around the place. And it's incredible the number of little clicky things that are going on, but you can do something about. The other thing that people don't take into account, and that can be the make or break of a nice recording or a nice stream, is the actual room sound. So does the room sound sweet? Does it sound nice? Or is it very reverberant? So again, the reverberant sound might come from reflective surfaces, but there are a lot of things you can do about reflective surfaces. You can probably see in here around me, I'm in a bit of a cocoon, and I'm surrounded by acoustic panels, and they're all portable panels. So basically, I got acoustic advice, but the panels that I have around me, the ones around my head and just behind me, have come from GIC Acoustics in the UK, and they weren't particularly expensive, but they've changed the sound of the room completely. And then I've screen panels up behind me that are homemade. So, that option is wide open to you if you want to put the least possible investment in. And in fact, as well as them being homemade, they're actually more effective than the ones I have on the walls, and they double up as a screen. So you can do a lot of things. Duvets and other things are soft furnishings, are things we would normally turn to if we were only recording audio, but you're going to be faced with the video element as well, and duvets hanging off the walls and mattresses up against the walls wouldn't really look pretty. So acoustic panels might be, worth a consideration if you're in this for the long haul. So that's just my next point. The other two areas that get overlooked, because people often rush into just streaming or recording, and the two other areas are compression and file formats. So basically, if you aren't mindful going into this, you can end up recording or streaming your music in a compressed format from the beginning when there isn't any need. And the stream is going to compress it anyway to suit what it needs. So our objective is going to make sure we keep your files in the best quality for as long as we can. File formats are another thing to be mindful of, and to have just a grasp of what it is you need at the next step so that you can work towards it. Because in this situation, there is no choice but to have to actually do conversions. But what you want to avoid is unnecessary conversions. And that should just be the aim, really. So if we take a look at live streaming or pre-recording, a lot of you will have made your decisions by now, or you've done a bit of both. And they're pretty much the pros of one or the cons of the other. So if we take live streaming, and this is going to be a little bit of the nature of the beast as well, some of you will be just dead comfortable doing it. It's a bit more has more of the live gig about it. It has the edge, the performance edge, the immediacy, the interaction, but it is risky. And I mean, like a live gig, you just have to deal with whatever comes your way. The downside is it's quite difficult to have any control over your quality. But even if we go with the techniques we go through today, it should put you in a better position if you want to do some groundwork before you stream. The one thing you can't control is technology failure, which is facing us all, really. So, you can do your best to test everything, but, that is what it is. So if you take the pre-recording route, you're giving yourself more options of a better polish on your final performance, more control. Of course, you can go at the thing more times. The downside is the planning is time consuming. Your performance may be flatter, but that doesn't have to be the case. That's up to you, really. And of course, once we commit to something like this, we always start to end up spending more money. Now, what I'm seeing people doing more so is mixing and matching, doing the things that matter the most. Like if they're trying to preserve their piece of music and get the best out of it, they might do a little video, but then they might do some sort of scheduled stream and do a bit of interaction. So what I'm going to do here is look at a couple of choices or methodologies. Now, anything I say today is only a tiny chunk of the cake. It's just, just going to try and help you along. This is not by any means taking absolutely everything into account. I'm going to look at two methodologies for approaching this, really. Either keeping it absolute ground zero, simple, or taking it up a step. So if we look at the first option here, taking your audio and video together, one device. So if we think of this as your phone or your computer and you are not going any farther than this, this is probably what any of you that have been streaming have been doing. You're just putting audio and video through one device straight to the stream. The other option is to take it up a step and to use two devices. So you are capturing your audio and video simultaneously, but you have two devices set up and you're actually splitting them. So your audio is getting recorded, say, for argument's sake here in the diagram, your audio here is getting recorded on your computer and your video is getting recorded on your phone, and they're getting remarried afterwards and synced together before they go out. So this second choice or methodology affords you with much more control over your quality and everything, and expense. So what I'm going to do now in the next number of slides is elaborate on both of these choices, and I'm going to give you two options within each of them so that you can start thinking about it. So we're going to go into, what equipment is required now and what budget, roughly the budgets, what these things are costing. And again, I'm pitching from pretty much ground zero up. I'm not pitching at people that already have existing recording studios and know what to do. The other thing I need to mention is that this is platform agnostic, and I have no affiliations with any equipment manufacturers. I'm purely going with industry standard equipment, and a lot of the stuff is equipment that I've tried and tested myself, so I'd feel happy recommending. So the first option is to keep it absolutely simple. Your smartphone, and all you need, if you don't want to go a step further, all you need is a streaming account with a streaming platform like OBS. And maybe if you were even to apply some of the tips and tricks from today, your quality might go up by a certain percentage anyway, let's hope. The second option in the one device, keeping it at one major device for say for recording or for streaming through, would be to move up to a laptop or a desktop with a camera. So it can either have its own camera, or you could have a web camera clipped on and an external USB mic. So that's affording you a bit more flexibility, at least, because you can move the camera around and you can move the mic around, and you're not tied to confined to trying to perform into both and get the best out of both. Now you'll notice here I have a bit of a watch point beside the external mic, and that's more because I'm saying USB mic here, because the only option, a USB mic should theoretically be better than an onboard mic in a laptop or a computer. I'm just putting in a warning because USB mics are not necessarily designed for music. They've been there for podcasting and things like that, and more recently they've just become extremely popular because of online learning. However, they've been more pitched at the consumer market and at speech. So there isn't a guarantee that they're going to be great with music. They may not be able to deal with, the frequencies that the music goes to, which are much higher and lower than speech. So I'm just saying go with caution. Try and dig in a bit deeper and find out if you know anybody that's used a USB mic with music, and is it any better. So now we're looking at the option, the choice of using two devices. So what you're doing is you're performing and you're recording, say, simultaneously, your audio and your video, but you've your computer taking one and you've, say, your phone taking the other, and you're going to put them together. So to do this, you're going to want to, you're moving out into using external equipment. So you'd use maybe an audio interface, a USB audio interface that hooks into your computer. And that allows you then to plug professional mics. So now we're going out beyond the USB mic. We're going to mics that end up with XLR terminations, mic leads. And they will record into your computer software. And meanwhile, you could have your phone on a tripod and have it just purely recording your video, which is ideal in terms of getting the best shots. And to expand on this option just a little bit, and this would just suit certain people, is a handheld recorder instead of an audio interface. Now, a handheld recorder, most of the ones that are available these days double up as an audio interface. So it allows you two scenarios where you could use it going straight into the computer just as a mechanism to get professional mics in, or you could leave the computer at home and take the handheld recorder out off to a venue or somewhere else where you want to record, and ideally maybe use the phone for the video, and then you bring them back together in the software. Now, the warning I would give here is that options 3 and 4, the minute you start going down this route, you do need additional equipment. So you'll need mics, windshields, whatever. But a lot of you performing musicians will already have these bits and pieces. So I'm going to dwell and focus a little bit or emphasise smartphones, because again, that's where a lot of people are, I think, at this point, and they maybe want to know how to get more out of the smartphone rather than, getting into any more techie stuff or than spending any more money, really. So we all know the benefits, and I would say if you're not going to invest fully in all the testing and the techie stuff, stay with the smartphone. It is actually, in this situation, it is quite hard to beat it. There's an awful lot going for it. And just the quality has just become so high. But what I'm going to just look at here, I'm not going to start listing the benefits. What I'm going to start looking at is picking at the limitations. And once you start picking at the limitations, you can go in and find ways around them, which is the really good thing. But I think the problem is that a lot of people have just overlooked the fact that there were limitations. They've just accepted it and gone. So the limitations straight up are, we don't have the same control as we'd have if we were going into an interface. We can't properly listen to what we're doing. The other thing is some phones, it can be quite difficult. They have a proprietary file format, and it can be quite difficult to export your files, or they will be incompatible with where you're trying to go with them. And then you're back into this thing of conversions and degradation. So you want to avoid that. The other thing that you can do very little about is if the storage capacity on your phone is not big enough, and video really takes space. So you just have to be careful about that. Now, this is something that is a hidden for a lot of people, that while you can record audio into your phone, it's coming back a little bit to what I was saying there with the USB mic. Built-in voice recording apps are really there. They were designed to take notes. They weren't necessarily designed for recording music. So they're not necessarily particularly kind to music. So they will automatically, the majority of them, be aiming to record in a compressed manner because it's possibly only note-taking and they don't want to eat up your space. So they won't necessarily be going for what is the best. They also won't necessarily be able to handle the range of frequencies that will come from music. So this will give you an example. This is just a screenshot that I took of, I was playing back a decent quality CD through nice hi-fi speakers, and I just recorded it onto my phone. I pushed the level a bit just to see what had happened, and it just chopped the top off everything. So we have these square top hats. So, and it squashed my file into a band. Now, that's the kind of thing that goes on out in the stream. So what, you don't want this kind of thing happening, right? So the recommendation at this point would be to go and look for a music recording app. Just simply music, and there's plenty of them out there. So that will actually allow you to get into the settings. So if we look at smartphones and the apps available, any of you with iPhones, you can, if you don't already have, you can download GarageBand free, and straight away you've got a really good app. Now, I have been told that there are some iPhones that will only record in mono. They'll all export in stereo. But if it matters to you, like if you're recording a voice, you'd be recording it in mono anyway. It'd be hideous to record it in stereo. However, if you're trying to do something that needs to be recorded in stereo, and if it's of huge importance to you, you may want to rethink that or look for another app. Android, I don't have experience of, but I'm told the voice recorder app is really good, and I've looked up reviews and they are really good, and it does record in stereo and exports in stereo. I have a question mark beside it because voice recorder would make me suspect because it goes against everything I've just said. But having said that, that just might be an unfortunate term. And the other thing is, because something is spec'd a particular way, if it doesn't sound right, trust your ears. That's the bottom line. And this applies to mics and it applies to budget and everything. Your ears are the primary judge. Just a little warning. When you go down the route, I'm being very, I suppose, narrow-minded here about, protecting audio. But you guys have to keep the weather eye on what's going to happen when you move and start incorporating video into this. So if you are going down the route of doing everything to the one device, you'll be going into the video app. And again, now, video is going to take an attitude like mine in that it's going to prioritize video. So it's going to have, a lot of the time, there won't be the same range of settings available. So basically, when you go into a video app, you need to check if you can get at the audio settings, and you need to set them to get the best for you. I do know that there are affordable video apps available there that are good for music, and you can get at your audio settings. So it's worth doing a bit of scouting around. So if you want to just test apps, this is just a quick sequence of things to do. If after you've downloaded the app or beforehand, check, is it capable of exporting to MP3 without any conversions? If it's not, just don't entertain it. Explore, when you get it, explore the menus and the available settings. If you can't get in, and if it's only giving you automatic settings, I'd say abandon it. I would recommend then moving on. Don't dwell too long on any of this because you'll have enough round trip tests to do. Record maybe 20 seconds, 30 seconds of music. You could do it even from the way I did it there, from coming from a speaker. It doesn't really matter. Something reasonable quality anyway, and that you're familiar with. And export it to wherever the phone says it can export it. So within the app, it should tell you, it should give you a choice where you want to send it. So then it may be somewhere on your phone. It may be you need a Dropbox account if it's Dropbox or Google Drive. It's just, you have to figure this out with your own phone. Now, the first thing I would do is export to wherever it says it can export to. And then the big question is, can you locate your files? I find a lot of the time it's quite hard to find files on that you've exported. And the next thing is, are they actually a MP3 format? So here are some things that are kind of interesting to some people, but they're very basic, but they could really be the make or break of it for you. People assume that I don't know where my phone is now. People assume that the mic on the mobile phone is just down at the bottom, and they don't think any more about it. But particularly with Apple, they're changing around where the mics are all the time and the number of mics in the phone. So some of the iPhones have like 4 mics in them, and I wouldn't even have a clue where they are. And from one model to another, they change them. So it doesn't matter what your next door neighbour has. Your make and model is the only thing that counts. So find out where the mic is, and then make sure you keep your hands clear of the mic when recording. Simple as that. I mean, bad recordings could be purely because the phone was capable, but you had the mic covered or something in the path of it. You want generally to point the mic directly at the source that you're trying to record. Now, you're going to have to do some testing with this. And suddenly, when we're in the video world and we're trying to do a video, we forget about all audio. The minute you start getting into video and start seeing yourself or seeing something looking crooked or looking whatever, you forget completely about where the mic should be pointing in terms of picking up the best audio. So now I'm hoping that today, by pointing these things out, that it'll just heighten your awareness and keep you back focused on the audio really. So if you're trying to minimise room sound, if it's kind of a bit clicky or a bit reverby or whatever, it may help to move as close as possible to the source. So moving your mic or you to the mic, as opposed to taking in a lot of room sound. Another interesting trick is to think of a mic as your ear. So a good test for, say for argument's sake, you want to record voice and guitar together. So your guitar is going to be down low and your voice is obviously up here. So if you can get somebody who's musical or has a good sound ear to test with you, and if they block one ear and turn sideways and walk past you while you're playing, and you need to be kind of methodical about this, but if they move their head up and down and try and find where the natural balance between your voice and the guitar is, that is the point, or even on the horizontal plane as well. So you'll find that sweet spot by blocking your ear and moving. So wherever that sweet spot is the area that you should be aiming to point the phone when you're recording. So that would be like a starting point. I recommend then doing test recordings. So if you mark these positions, so if you have a ballpark, you have an area that's at least a good place to start, and you have found how to get the best out of the mics on the phone. So you know where they are in the phone, so you know when you're moving them, so you're now making calculated judgments. Mark positions of a chair on the floor where your feet were, take notes, and what I would do is do a little test recording, go off and see what you thought was going to be the answer. What does it sound like when it's recorded? Note which one it is, take one, come back, make an adjustment. Don't do a load of them together. Make an adjustment, bounce it out, go and listen and compare it to the first one. And so if you build your knowledge methodically, you can actually fault find systematically. That's the bottom line. So if we look at the second option, which is just expanding out a bit, which is, so we've moved from the mobile phone. So the laptop with the camera and an external mic. I mentioned these are 2 mics. Now, one of the things I would say here is we're still recording to one device or streaming through one device. If you're going down the USB mic route, if I would say look up reviews or talk to friends, but try and tease out whether one is suitable for music. Now, I have done considerable tests recently on this with voices for online learning, and it's come out way above this AKG one. This come out way above any of the little phone plug-in mics or any of the other USB. I tested a few USB mics, and also Sound on Sound have reviewed them. So I picked out the Lyra as being above any of the others. Now, what I don't know is how well it's going to behave with music. Since those reviews and since I did the tests, Audix brought out this one. Now, the confidence, the reason I'm sort of emphasising these guys is the confidence I would have here is in AKG and Audix are professional microphone manufacturers, and they actually manufacture beautiful mics. So they will have brought their expertise in this whole, they saw an opportunity and they jumped on the bandwagon later, but they'd be bringing in much better expertise than the people that will have been pitching at the consumer industry. So that's just my take on it. Now, the big watch point here is if you do plug in a USB mic, even though they're supposed to be plug and play, you need to check that your computer is seeing the external mic. Very often they just don't. So you can have gone to all this trouble and you're performing into your mic and you find out afterwards that you've still used the onboard mic. So if you're on a Mac, you need to go into your system preferences and go into your audio or sound, I think it's called, and check that the Mac is seeing it. Then you need to go into the software that you're recording into and make sure that the software is, and there's a further step in a Mac. Before you go into the software, you need to go into audio MIDI setup. So there's 3 steps on a Mac to make absolutely sure each one of them is seeing the external mic. And if it's on a PC, I believe you go into control panel settings, sound to find, but I mean those of you that are PC users will find it'll be under the sound settings anyway. Just make sure that it's seeing that has automatically selected the external mic. So if we look at an audio interface, now we're looking at 2 devices. So here this is an absolute basic industry entry level. I have used this for loads of applications. It's very cheap, it's very robust, it's just trouble-free, no difficult software, nothing. It gives you can put 2 external mics in, or you could put 2 instruments in, line in. You have input level controls. Where's my mouse? You have input level controls. You have a headphone socket. You have a volume control for your headphones, and it connects to your computer by USB. Pretty trouble-free if you just want to do something small and want that independence, because once you go into the software, then you can actually mix or you can EQ, and you just, yeah. This is just the big brother. So that's the Scarlett range. They're both made by Focusrite. This is the Claret range. These are by no means the top of the range, but they're good workhorses. This allows you far more inputs, and I believe it'll just have far more bells and whistles. And this is our other option, the handheld recorder. So again, there'll be different people will have different requirements. This is the Zoom range. They do little handheld recorders with built-in mics from €200 upwards. They have a huge range. I picked one in the middle that I'm quite familiar with, the H5. I've used a lot of them, tested a lot of them. Whoops. I've tested a lot of them. They allow you to plug in 2 external mics, or you can go line in, and they have this little clip-on, clip-off stereo capsule on top, so you could actually record 4 channels with that recorder. You could also, so you can record directly to the recorder and dump your files onto computer afterwards to remarry with the video, or you could use the device as an audio interface and just plug into it and go straight into the computer. So it allows you that flexibility. This is just the upmarket version. Sound Devices, they're in the professional league, really. Beautiful little machines. That's the Mix Pre, which is I think 3 mic inputs and maybe 2 line. It doesn't come with any mics. You have to do everything else. You have to provide everything else. Now, microphones. This is a big subject, and one where there are lots and lots and lots of questions. I obviously can't cover the whole oh God, the whole range of microphones. But what I have done here is picked out a handful of mics that work in different applications, and an awful lot of mics are actually interchangeable. So if we just take a look at vocals for a start, most of you that are out there will have come across the Shure 58. It's the rock and roll standard and has been there for, God, as long as I know anyway. If you have a Shure 58, it will do the job for you. It's not going to do anything special, but it won't let you down. And it's probably going to be an awful lot better than a USB mic. Shure Beta 57, Shure Beta 87, they're all good workhorses. The Beta 87 is particularly special, but what I would say is when you start to move out into mics that become a bit more special, there'll always be the case where there'll be somebody's voice that it doesn't suit. So it might suit 9 voices and be absolutely gorgeous, and the 10th it mightn't suit at all. Whereas if you're down the range at the earlier ones, the lower down the range, they mightn't have as much clarity, so then they won't be as sensitive. So you just have to make a judgment call and try to, obviously if you're able to audition something before you get it, it's the best thing. Now I brought in this just for the sake of it, and an Audio-Technica mic. It's like an entry-level studio mic. So this is a good, clean, neutral mic. Again, nothing special, but would seem to work on all vocals really. And it looked the part on video really. So right, I had to think hard about acoustic instruments because there's any number of mics out there. And if somebody came to me at this stage in my career and said, pick one mic for instruments, this would be it. There are other mics that are more expensive and that just don't sound half as good. This mic is very, very versatile in terms of certainly live, the number of instruments that I can put it on, and it works well even as a studio mic. Amps, 58s, 57s, you can't go wrong. There's loads of things you can put on amps. Don't put condensers, put dynamics. Percussion, the same thing, you can put 58s, 57s, or Audix and Sennheiser have done more specialist mics for percussion, and they have actual whole kits for like drum kits. So if you're looking down that route, I would look at those sort of manufacturers really. Choirs, are a number of questions come in, and the big issue, well, number one with choirs, you'll need 2 mics, so you need a stereo pair. The big issue is the height. So hanging mics are a huge advantage. And for that, I have just listed an Audio-Technica Pro 45. That's a very reasonable priced mic, and they are designed to be hung as the other Audio-Technica is. I haven't used either. The top one, the Pro 45, a colleague of mine has used, and he said it's absolutely brilliant. The one below it is just the more upmarket version, and you just have to be very careful that you don't get one, oops, that's a wide cardioid, which basically means it's going like that as opposed to narrow, or hypercardioid. So for a choir, you would want to make sure it's wide. So if you were purchasing something like that, you'd want to make sure you understood it's called the microphone pattern. So I have listed here the 81 again, my favourite mic, and the 87. They would both be really good as either of them, if you had pairs of them. But the reason I've put a watch point is it's going to be very hard to get them up high enough and looking down on a choir. So, and I don't really like hanging things just off their cables. So if you've a workaround for that, they're good mics. So what comes with this is when we've now moved to taking on outboard gear, there's always more expense. So you will need pop shields. You need them available if you're going to be using vocal mics. Some of you will need DIs. Good names are manufacturers are BSS, Radial, ART. Again, I wouldn't go for the bottom of the range. I would try to pitch somewhere in the middle. Emo are another good passive DI. They're very trouble-free, but I think they're a good bit more expensive. Headphones, you need headphones if you're getting into this game, and you need decent ones, not little earbuds. That's a given really. The Sennheiser do loads and loads of headphones. This particular one is an industry standard, the HD25 Mark II. You can't really go wrong. You can get an awful lot better, but I wouldn't be going lower. And they've a light version, which I certainly wouldn't take on board for this job. So the HD25 Mark II, and there's an Audio-Technica equivalent, it's hard to go wrong with them. Cables and accessories, you're just going to have to get what you need, really. A tripod for a camera is a good investment, or a tripod attachment for a phone is a great investment. Gives you huge flexibility. And what I'm noticing a lot of people are doing is they're just throwing the phone in front of them and saying, I'm going to stream. And they're not paying any heed to the audio or the visual. So even if you had a tripod and you were just recording with your phone and had it up high, looking down, higher than rather than in front of you, the chances are the quality would go up by a huge amount, even just that little adjustment alone. You'll need to have SD cards for recorders. I recommend not going with the one that will come with the recorder, and they don't all come with recorders anyway. I would go with SanDisk. They're very reliable, and ideally you'd have 2 discs. Batteries, you need high quality batteries. You do not want rechargeables when you're doing something important, and you don't want cheap batteries either. Software. So we've looked at phone apps and what you should do. Digital audio workstation. So that's the software that you would be using with your computer. So Audacity is free for Mac and PC. It's very user friendly. It's very easy to get in and get out of it if you just don't really want to know much about the techie stuff or about mixing or anything to do with sound. At least you don't have to learn loads to get yourself through. But if you do want to explore, it has lots of features. It's very comprehensive and it's very stable. Very good for something that's free. Reaper, a lot of musicians are using. You can get it from Mac or PC. It's paid. I don't think it's terribly expensive. I've never used it, but I know musicians like it, as do musicians like Logic, more so than engineers would like Logic, let's say. GarageBand is free for both your Mac or your phone. And Pro Tools, of course, which is what I prefer, but there's no need for something as extravagant as Pro Tools for this activity. So, files and formats. Okay, I hope to not confuse you here. I'm trying to keep it as simple and as straightforward as possible. When you're recording, okay, we'll talk about sample rate for a second without getting too into the techie side of this. If you record at a high sample rate, it is okay to convert downwards. But if you record at a low sample rate, you don't want to be upward sampling. So we're back to this whole conversation about converting files. The best thing to do is to actually try and work with just find out in advance where you're trying to go with your files before you set up what way you're going to record them, so that there's the least possible conversions. So for audio, the standard would be to record at 44.1, and these will be within your settings and the settings in the apps that I was talking about. The standard for CD would have been 44.1 at 24 or 16-bit. It'll ultimately be exported out at 16-bit. These would be your uncompressed, full quality WAV or AF files. Now, you could record at 96 and reduce it down, and you wouldn't, it should be technically speaking sound better, and you wouldn't lose quality. And then when you're exporting out for CD, you'd be exporting WAV or AF. When you're exporting out for the stream or for video, you will be exporting as MP3. Now, here's a little piece of information that a lot of people don't seem to know about, and I use it all the time, let's say. When you're exporting as MP3, there are a load of defaults, and one of them can be 128 kilobits per second or 256. And most people don't even know that there's a little drop-down menu in most software where you can go in and you might find 320. That would be the third option. That's much higher quality. So if you select 320, the majority of applications that accept MP3 will accept the 320. And the thing about 320 is that the quality is almost as good as a WAV file, whereas 128 is really horribly compressed. So that is a little piece of information that is very valuable in terms of maintaining your quality. So what we've done here now is we've looked at how to get the best source audio to get rid of issues, to recognise things along the way, and now we're looking at trying to maintain our quality for as long as we can, to go as far down the process as we can with good quality audio. If you see in your settings compressed or lossy, that's not what you want. You want to see lossless. So the default will probably be the first one, compressed. The other default that is in a lot of software would be automatic level control or automatic gain control, which is basically saying they'll take care, they won't let you, so they're going to actually compress you or stop you before you get into trouble and go into overload. So it's basically more like an algorithm dealing with the dynamics in your music rather than your ear or doing it musically. So I would much prefer to set my input levels and leave a little margin so that I don't get into trouble, but that my music is breathing as well as it can, rather than a machine telling me that it thinks I'm going to overload it. So that's one to turn off as well. Now, this is the one that can get a little bit confusing. Video standards, if you're recording your audio and video together into a video app, for video, your sample rate needs to be 48 kilohertz. So you just go with that. And 24 or 16-bit, it doesn't matter. It'll be exported out at 16 anyway. When you're exporting video out, and that'll be your video and audio combined, it will then be an MP4. So that's the format that can play back both. So just keep an eye out. If you're bringing your audio to your video to be imported in, it most likely can't take a WAV file. It will be able to take an MP3. And if you're in that position where you're bringing the MP3 with you, you can go with the top option here, get it out at 320 kilobits. If you're recording straight into the video software, just make sure you go in, you're recording at 48K. And it's fine because you won't be converting up or down, you'll just be exporting out. So these are all possibly very obvious little tips, but we forget about them. And again, the big thing is when we're trying to focus on too many things, there's a stream, there's a video, we can lose sight of some of what should be the most obvious things. You want a quiet, non-reverberant room. You want to close all windows and doors. Curtains, if you've curtains anywhere, close them because they'll protect you from reflective surfaces. You could put duvets on the wall. They're probably not going to look pretty. So acoustic panels would be your option. Mats and rugs, especially if it's quiet music like acoustic music or just singing or whatever. Mats, rugs, get people to take their shoes off. Because there's nothing more annoying than, bangs and thumps. And sometimes I even put a towel underneath the laptop, or if there was a mic or your your phone. I suppose you'll just have to be careful about what can get seen. But anything, sound bounces off a table, it'll bounce off, my voice will bounce off anything hard that's in front of it, and it'll bounce off the sides, anything side walls. So what you're trying to do is protect the sound that's going into the mic, try and get it going into the mic without bouncing off anything else and secondary sounds following it and being recorded as well. You need to keep an eye on input recording levels and understand what is going on, and we'll look at that in a minute, and output listening levels. 3-to-1 rule, you need to have an awareness of it if you're going to start getting a bit fancy and if you're going to start trying to put two mics on one instrument, because there's just a relationship between the distance between the mics and the source. So you need to, maybe check it out if you think you're going to be using it. And I would say don't use effects when recording. So there are situations where people can record through reverb, and I would say absolutely no. It's like the icing on the cake. What you want is to get your good source audio, and if you want to put it through something like Audacity or some other software and add a little bit of reverb, if it's nice reverb, but you need to be doing it in a very good listening environment, because if you're doing it with small speakers or bad headphones, it could be absolutely terrible when it comes out. So you just need to be careful with those things. Less is more. Okay, we're going to take a look at record input levels. You do need meters and you do need headphones to do this properly. So these are just screenshots that I took out of, or took from GarageBand, to just give you an example. If we take a look at this here, this is, we see here, in, so out of our microphone, into our software, out of our software to wherever it's going, okay? So it could be out to our headphones, out to our speakers, out to our video. So keeping that in, out in mind really helps. And where people get confused is with the input level here is the amount we are allowing the level of the mic to get through to the software. So if I turn this control up here, I am literally turning up the level that is coming from the mic. However, and if that goes into the red, it's back to the cake analogy. One digital clip and it's over. It cannot be fixed afterwards. There is nothing for it but to go back and re-record. So what you ideally are doing, so basically those green bars are telling you the level that is getting in. But that could be any kind of noise. It's literally an electronic reading. What you need your headphones for is to find out what exactly it is that's going in. So is that the washing machine? Or is there underlying sounds that we weren't even aware of? Am I suddenly hearing somebody's tummy rumbling, whatever? So if I have headphones on, I'm removed really from the environment. And what I hear in the headphones is actually what's getting recorded. The meter is the level at which it's getting recorded. So a good way I find of setting these up, because I see people going for extremes and not being careful and not knowing where to start. I think if you turn everything down to nothing to start, so turn that input level down to nothing and turn what here is your monitor level, it's your output. So say your monitor level would be your headphones, turn them both down to nothing. Put on your headphones and start talking into your mic and gently, slowly rise up the input level of the mic. Say if you brought it to 50%, 12 o'clock, and did the same with your headphones. So now you've given them both, they're not necessarily interconnected or anything, but you've gone halfway in both of their capability. Now, technically speaking, if that meter there is reading halfway at that point in time, I would expect you to be psychologically hearing at a comfortable level, not too loud, not too low. That would be the ideal world. So you at least have a reference place to start here. If your meter is reading on the low side, I would say now what you want to do is start increasing until you, it's a very sensitive trackpad. Okay, so start increasing your input level so that it rises up to a point where, we'll see if the mouse will behave. So it rises up to, you'd like reading about there when it's peaking, and it should be getting almost uncomfortably loud in your headphones. But at this point, you can just start to adjust your headphones to suit your comfort. They are just literally a comfort check and a knowledge check, okay? The important one is the input level on the way in. So we don't want to see this kind of thing happening consistently. See the way we're just hitting on a red bar there. If you hit the wall and hit a real red, which is the top of the range, you know, it's over. So if you're averaging around here, I'd say you're in a dangerous place. Whereas if that was actually the very loudest note in a whole passage of music, then it's quite good. It's safe. I hope that's clear enough, and we can come back to it in the Q&A if anybody has questions. So these are kind of obvious, but look, I forget them even all the time myself. Unplug fridges, heaters, any device that can click, from a cooker to God knows what, timers, you name it. Mute mobiles or put in airplane mode. There's loads of things that can go on with feedback on mobiles, but also what is worse is if a notification comes in and you're just at the end of something really good. You need to check the available storage on recording devices. With handheld recorders, a trick that isn't always stated in the manual, but it is a valuable piece of information, is to format the SD card in the machine. So the machine will tell you to either initialize or format when you're setting it up, and it'll give you the instructions and it'll be in a menu. It's no biggie, but it's something worth doing in the machine itself, rather than trying to do it in a computer and getting the machine to read it after a computer, let's say. The other thing, and be careful of the type of card that you get. The other thing that I can't emphasize enough, particularly with the Zoom recorders, is new high quality alkaline batteries. They do funny things as well when, if the batteries start to drop in their charge, they can change sample rate in the middle of your recording, and that is an absolute no-no. So use mains power either if you have one of the little adapters. Now, a thing that I have found very useful is to do all your initial testing on a different piece of music. So something that has the same kind of dynamic range, but is not the song that you're going to go out with. So remember I said earlier about, the magic or the performance being a bit more flat if you're recording. If you actually save the final piece and maybe only do one run through, but do all the groundwork and all the testing, and ideally do it on different days. So the day that you're going to actually do the performance, everything's quite fresh. And it's the same rules would apply to sound check. It's bad news to rehearse the song to death, the main song, the hit of the night, because it'll be worn out by the time the gig comes. And I can't say this often enough. Test, test, test. Okay, testing strategies. So as we've seen here, this is what we're aiming for, and I've emphasized this enough. So this is what we want to aim for from the beginning. The highest quality. We've eliminated all the things that could get us bad audio, or a lot of them anyway. We're going to export as an MP3, and we're going to aim to do our best to get out at 320 kilobits per second. And then the next thing that we want to do is maintain that for as long as we can, either going to the video, we're going to be cheeky about it, we're going to try and hold on to that quality right up to the gateway of the stream, if we can. So that's the sole objective, okay? So the only way to test and to find out what's really going on is maybe, well, it's not the only way, but it's one of the ways. Create free accounts. So you could use SoundCloud for just testing your audio. YouTube, you can have YouTube unlisted. There's a Facebook test page for the stream. So like if you make a plan with yourself to make these little test recordings and upload them, you can test them off other things then as well, and compare them. And any of this you could do, even if you're only going to stream from the mobile, it just gives you much bigger edge over your quality, even if you don't want to elaborate on all the gear I've talked about. So I'd say upload your files to these places and take whatever links they give you, copy them. Now, what I would ideally look at is, instead of clicking on the link and opening up again from the SoundCloud or whatever, I would email the link to myself and log out of all the accounts so that you're not listening to some legacy version that it's picked up. Ideally, open up the link on another computer or a friend's computer. The other thing that you really should be doing with your audio is listening on different speakers in different environments or different headphones, not little buds, but even take it out on public transport, maybe with little headphones in then, and just see how well it's holding up. Another thing that is a valuable benchmark is listening to a similar piece of music on iTunes or Spotify, and then flipping to your own one and go over and back. And so if you have a piece of music that was well recorded and that's getting airplay, so whatever volume you listen to that at without changing the volume, flip over and listen to your own and see where you're at. That's actually a really good test, and then maybe try that in a few locations as well. So we've looked at live streaming and pre-recording. We've emphasised the importance of your source audio, what to export at, and the capabilities of apps. So you need to be vigilant from the beginning. You do need headphones and meters, and now you know why. Your input levels are very important, and now you know how to check your output levels. And I would say test all final files and links on as many platforms and speakers as possible. That's me.
Thanks very much, Mairéad, for that fantastic and very clear walkthrough of what we need to do. I think very valuable for musicians who um, would probably prefer to be 100% focused on their performance, but now need to be engineers and producers too. So thanks for that. And we do have some questions here in the Q&A, which I might read out to you here.
Dying of the heat.
One, Mairéad, is a question we were sent in advance yesterday, and I have it here. Hi, Mairéad, could you recommend a very good mic to use on location with an iPhone? Trad, classical, vocal, and harp.
Run that by me again.
A very good mic to use on location with an iPhone for voice and harp, trad and classical style.
Okay, so that somebody is the person here, or can we chat?
I think,
Eilish,
would you be happy to chat if I unmuted you?
I can go ahead and anyway have a stab at answering it. I'll just be speculating. Yeah?
Yeah.
So on location means presumably outdoor. If it's to record a voice and a harp and it's outdoor and it's just an iPhone, but they want to use an external mic, it's a big ask. That's all I can say. It would be probably really good to find out what has been tried and what not, because if it is an iPhone, as I've maybe said there earlier, the phones are really, the mics are actually really high quality, and it can be quite hard to beat them. So I am aware of, I've tested a number of little plug-in mics. Now, obviously I don't have access to the whole, there's any number of mics and they're coming out every day. But I have tested a number of these little plug-in mics, not necessarily ones for iPhones. No, they'd have the little, more the jack connector. And they haven't even compared with the USB mics. When I've put them to the test, put them up against each other. And they haven't even been up to the quality of the USB mics. And that is without even tasking them with music. But where a lot of these mics are invaluable is for film. So you see, they're designed towards speech and for film. So on location, if somebody was trying to do a recording in a car, film something in a car, they couldn't bring in the big shotgun mics. So these little small clip-on ones, and even at that, then they'd have really high quality wireless mics that won't plug into phones. So it gets all quite convoluted. Yeah. So like with an iPhone, the first thing I would say is, number one, I would say there's an awful lot of things here. A harp is a really hard thing to amplify and a hard thing to record.
Hi, can you hear me, Mairéad? Sorry, I don't want to cut.
Oh, yes.
Hi, Mairéad. Sorry, I had the question. I have actually got an AKG Lyra mic, and I've been using that, but I just wanted more portability, and I was worried that the iPhone itself wouldn't be kind of high quality audio enough.
I'll tell you, Eilish, I can't put my hand on heart at this, but I think if you went and looked up if you were to look up the iPhone that you've got, because I obviously don't know all the different versions,
Yeah.
And find out. So were you able to follow what I was saying there earlier about where the mics are and placing things? Was that all making sense to you?
Well, it was, but I'm not sure where the mic is on my phone.
None of us know. That's the point I'm trying to get across.
Yeah.
None of us know. You just have to Google your actual phone and its model number.
Yes.
And find out and get a diagram. And then straight away you are armed with a load of information. And then if you only start doing experimental stuff. So I would say the simplest thing to start testing, first of all, you find out where those things are. What were you recording into GarageBand?
No, I wasn't. I just actually used, I didn't use any software. I just used the AKG Lyra connected to the computer. I had earphones as monitor, but I was taking a video with just photo booth on my Mac.
Okay, to be honest with you, what I would try to do is, so were you talking about Are you?
Sorry, I wasn't using the phone there at all. So sorry. I haven't really used anything with my phone, just the phone itself. But I'm trying to up the level of the audio.
Okay.
Yeah.
So was it a PC or a Mac?
Mac.
Laptop.
A desktop.
A Mac desktop that the Lyra plugged into.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, and you're using so that would have been the inbuilt mic or the inbuilt camera. I would say, I suppose, and I'm a devil for this, just be completely methodical and start from scratch with one or the other and do a process of elimination. So if you want to move away from do a series of tests on the phone, even if you follow the list of things that I said to do there, that's giving you. So the first thing I would do with the phone is, sorry, do you want me to concentrate on the phone for now?
Yes.
Okay, and then you can come back, because it's all the same kind of thing, but it's just not to mingle too many strays in there. Just do methodical things. So the first thing I would do is look up the model of the iPhone. So it's going to be a 5S or an 8S or whatever it is, and then try and find out, and you'll find out from Apple anyway, where the microphones are placed. So then straight away, the simplest thing that you can do is even experiment yourself with recording and moving around the mics, if you're able to see my face there. So, so here's my phone, right? So if they tell me that there's mics in those four corners, as opposed to down there where we all assume it is, I don't know if you can see that, we always assume it's there. So if they tell me that the mics are there, I can try this kind of thing and see what happens, and see where my voice starts to fall off and see where it starts to pick up. So your voice is the easiest thing to do this with. So if you're able to wear headphones at the same time, it'll speed it up completely, because you won't even have to bother recording. Okay?
Okay.
So finding the capability of the mics, you might be absolutely shocked at the quality of the mics in the iPhone.
Okay.
They are so good. But the problem is not knowing. People don't use them properly. The next thing I would do is just download GarageBand and get used to it.
Okay.
I know it's like I had to do this myself a few weeks ago, and I never use things like that on the phone. I was resisting it. But I mean, I'm a happy player in Pro Tools. And after half an hour of just cursing it, I was fine. So then the main thing is knowing what you're looking for. So what you'll want to do is get GarageBand working. It's free. Get it working on the phone. Have tested, at least you have a familiarity with your mics, even just with the straightforward Notes app that's there. Then what you really want to do is get your voice going into GarageBand at a reasonable level. So take on board all the things I said about levels. So start poking away at settings and at levels and things like that, and then export a file. So straight away you're getting used to GarageBand. You're exploring inputs, you're exploring outputs. You've now started looking into settings. You know where your mics are. And then suddenly you'll be in a position to say, well, hang on a second, if I put my phone in such and such a place. Do you see where I'm coming from?
Yeah.
So you're building the whole thing up bit by bit. So when there's something you don't like, you can go back a step.
Yes.
Am I making sense to you?
Yeah, absolutely. That's great, Mairéad. Thank you.
Right. So then I would say to you, when you say location, are you talking about outdoor?
Yeah, just, I've done some performance videos just in this studio that I have in the wooden room, and they're all looking the same with the wooden walls behind, and just kind of wanted to take the harp out and do something more scenic.
Okay.
But I know it's much more problematic, but
and like the other thing then is you'll have to start with that. Then you'll have to start the next thing that I would do. Sorry, I'm just being really anal and methodical about it here. But the next thing I would do is move the phone around. If you have one of those little clamps that you can put in a tripod, a clamp for the phone, it'd be brilliant. They're not dear either. There's is it Manfrotto, and I have a little one that cost me, I don't know, it's about €16 or something. But it'll give you huge flexibility as to the angle. But then try and find the sweet spot on the harp, right?
Yes.
And then do that thing that I was saying of, if you're going to be trying to catch video at the same time, you're going to be compromising, but Simon will be able to give you piles of more tricks about that. But maybe coming from above, looking down. If you're wired, did you say it's a wire harp?
Yes, it is a wire harp. Yeah.
They're louder, aren't they? Are they?
Not necessarily,
Okay,
not
okay.
really, a little bit.
Yeah, well, then you'll know what your own vocal is like. So, I mean, you'll know what the normal balance is, whether your voice comes out louder than your harp or vice versa.
Yeah.
So the thing is, I suppose the methodology that I'm giving you guys is to go a step at a time. You're informing yourself all the way. So then when you have to make an adjustment up or down, it's not something random. It's
Yeah.
based on information. So then when video comes along, you know that you have to manage to find a way to catch the video somewhere within where that balance between the voice and harp comes in, right?
Yes, yes.
So then the other thing, so that's and I mean what might pay off would be to have the computer recording the video, like what I was saying there, and the phone recording if your phone mics are adequate, the phone recording the music, and maybe the camera on the computer, and going that route of separating them out. I don't know. It's going to be experimental. But one of the things that strikes me here is the number of things that you're trying to do with it is a difficult instrument, but it's not impossible. If what I'd be thinking here is, if it's just a scenic background, if you were to think about it in advance, and this would be a question for Simon's workshop, what would strike me would be to use the green screen effect with the videoing, so that you can shoot a nice little video location thing outdoor that has nothing to do with your music, and actually replace your studio background.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Your location. Now, or the other thing you could do is, be recording in your studio. You could have a backdrop, you could have whatever you want, and cut away. Your
Yes.
music track can be going, but you could cut away to these various nice pieces of video
Yes.
from elsewhere. And that isn't the most difficult thing to do in video software. If you just kind of are a bit methodical and not too ambitious, do a test the first time around.
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? And build up your skills, and just keep it simple, keep it simple until you have the skills built up.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thanks very much, Mairéad. That's fantastic.
Thanks,
Good.
Mairéad. Yeah, I think we could move on to some more questions, because we've got quite a few here.
All right, sorry about that. That was a biggie.
And I think we might have some more biggies.
Oh my God.
Next question down the list anyway. How can you tell if a mic is suiting someone's voice or not?
Your ears. I mean, ultimately, this is the saddest thing and the hardest thing. People don't listen. They do an awful lot. They attempt to do things audio related with their eyes. They attempt to edit. They attempt to just go on tech specs. They attempt to go. You listen. And it's about critical listening. Now, most of you are musicians, I'd imagine. I think you should be. And you'll have learnt about ear training on the way up. I have developed a whole ear training in the frequency domain to train musicians in the language of frequencies, in fact. But it's literally drill and practice to get used to sounds. And if it's sounding good to you, the chances are it's good. Is that okay? It's not meant to be a smart answer. That's
great. Thanks very much, Mairéad. That's great. Just looking down my list, there's a couple of questions, Mairéad, about syncing audio and video. I don't know if you want to get into any of that, or let me read out a couple of the questions so you get a sense. Okay. So, is it possible, and is it too difficult, and is it not too difficult to sync audio and video if you record audio and video on separate? And there's another one similar. How do you marry audio from software with the video from the phone?
Okay, these are questions that I'll give you a superficial answer to, and then you take them maybe to the other workshop. But if there's somebody here that can't go to the other workshop, I'll do my best with them. Is that okay?
That's the workshop on Monday, in case anyone's wondering, the video workshop at 11 a.m. on Monday. Yeah,
so if they're having difficulty with that, I'll attempt to go a bit further. So essentially, if you are recording your audio and video from the one performance, so say what I'm doing now, and we'll pretend I'm playing an instrument, but that I have the instrument mic'd up here, and that it's just going off to the to my laptop, say, and I've the phone recording my video. Generally, what happens in the film world is they use a clapperboard as an indicator, so it's like a click at the start. So you say, we're going to start, and you go 3, 2, 1, and give yourself a breather, and then start to record. So that then you have your recorded files finished. And when you bring them, import them into something like, be it iMovie or Final Cut Pro or Premiere, or there's Windows Photos app is another one. I don't know if that'd have the capability of this, but basically when you bring them in, the software these days even has a syncing tool. And once you have that click that's with both, it's really easy. Once you line up the audio and the video even marginally close to each other, you just make a selection and go to the menu and hit sync, and it will actually sync them up. It's easy as that. However, if you record separately and try to do it from 2 different performances, so try to do your audio in the studio and go back and sing to it, that is hellishly difficult to sync. And Simon may have other tricks, but that's the limit of my experience.
That's great. Thanks, Mairéad. No, a very, very clear overview of that. 2 more questions we have here. One is, hi Mairéad, very useful info. Would you have any more comments on OBS? I guess from an audio point of view, that is.
I don't. I'll tell you, I've only opened up OBS myself once, and it wasn't even for streaming. It was for screen capturing or something. I have set up a radio station with streaming, and all I know is that when you go into the streaming platform, you get... I actually am going to provide links to this in the PDF, a little YouTube video on OBS, in fact. But I just know from other streaming software, you get a list of boxes to tick, as opposed to, so it might, it might say 128 or 256, but it's not going to give you high quality bit rates or whatever. Anything beyond that, I'm out of my depth with OBS. I do know that Simon is familiar with it, and I have some info on it in the PDF that'll come out.
That's great. Thanks, Mairéad. We'll be emailing that PDF. Here's a question, Mairéad. Do you recommend acoustic vocals or amplified mic'd vocals for live streaming, for example, with guitar and vocals? It would need to be mic'd, wouldn't it?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I was thinking of somebody trying to put a voice through an amp, which people do sometimes. Oh God. What are they going to do with the? There's an amp, a guitar amp, is it? Sorry, run that by me again.
No, shall I bring in Cormac? Cormac, are you happy to speak?
Sorry, I just misinterpreted and then I went off.
Let me get
acoustic
Cormac to speak.
Sorry, I think I misunderstood.
Hello.
Hi, I probably misunderstood.
Right, thank you. Yeah, no, it's basically the voice that is coming from now. Just a natural, no mic voice. Is that preferred in live streaming as opposed to miking up? Traditionally, as in miking your voice. Am I being clear now? So basically,
well, it's
no mic or no mic.
Either way. Like, so if you're going into your computer or you're going into your phone, it's going into a mic in it anyway.
Right, yeah, exactly.
So, like the conversation I was having there with Eilish about, she was exploring external mics, and I was kind of bringing her back to the fact that the mic that's inside in the phone may be better than the other options.
Yeah.
Is that making sense?
Yeah, but I suppose would you agree it depends on the room as well? If you get a good room, you might as well use the acoustic of the room for your voice.
Well,
no,
they're completely different things.
All right.
The quality of the mic will have a huge bearing. So the mic in a cheap laptop will probably not do you any justice, regardless of, my room here is up to BBC standard acoustically, right? But if I had a bad laptop with an onboard mic, God knows what would happen. So the room won't do it on its own. However, the certain phones these days, the mics in the phones are really good quality, but some of them aren't. So then you have to look at, as I was going methodically through it there, what you're plugging in. Just because you're plugging it in externally doesn't mean that it's going to be better quality. Like I said, I've plugged various mics into phones and they weren't great. Whereas I have used some of those USB mics with laptops and desktops, and they were far superior to the computer mic. So the phones seem to have passed the computers out, if that's making sense to you.
Yeah, no, I suppose I was getting, the traditional PA setup where you connect your mic to a PA.
Yeah.
If you made a video of that, is that better than just singing straight into the phone mic? Do you know what I mean? Not
No.
micing your voice.
I think what will happen there, Cormac, if I'm understanding you correctly, is that number one, you'd be trying to play in the same room as the PA. But then you have speaker sound coming out delayed.
Yes.
And so you have your vocal going through the PA, it's coming out amplified, and it's going back into a mic to go down to the stream. So unless it was a feed from a mixing desk, in which case you'd want the speakers turned off.
Right.
Or you're going to get in delays, I'd imagine.
Okay, yeah. All right.
But you could fake it.
Oh, yeah, of course. I'd go to the old Top of the Pops, yeah.
Yeah, I hope that answers.
Thank you, yes.
That's great, Mairéad. Thank you for that. I think we just have a couple more questions here. Comment, not a question. I live stream acoustically from my bedroom straight to my iPhone without mics and amps. I think it sounds better than some streams that use mics and amps. Yeah, like you're saying, Mairéad, it depends on the device.
Yeah, because I mean, you ultimately are going into a mic in the device.
Yeah.
But I am a big believer in keep it simple, keep it clean, and only add things incrementally if they are going to be better or make it better, but not for the sake of it. So I suppose what I really try to emphasize the whole way through this is take a look at what you've got, examine it, and get the absolute best out of what you've got, and then only add on and as needed.
Great. I think that brings us to the end of all the questions. Thank you very much, Mairéad. Yeah, it just remains for me to thank you for that very clear presentation and for helping us to understand a little bit more about what we need to think about in terms of audio. So I'd like to thank everybody who's attended today for your attention and for your great questions. When you leave the webinar today, your screen should direct you to a survey. It would be great if you could I think it'll only take you a minute to complete the survey, and there'll also be a link to the survey in your follow-up email, your automated email. But your feedback will help inform our future events, so it'd be very much appreciated if you could. And please do tune in on Monday at 11 a.m. For Simon Peter King's talk on optimizing your video. That's all from us. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.